The 3 words that stopped him cold weren't, "Sir, you're mistaken." They were the ones spoken with a chilling finality by the gate agent. Her voice, a blade of ice in the sterile airport air. "You don't belong here." For Dr. Jameson King, a man who had built his life on logic physics and the elegant dance of numbers, this was an equation that didn't balance. He held a first-class ticket, a VIP boarding pass, and the quiet dignity of a man on his way home. But in that moment, none of it mattered. He was about to be taught a lesson in perception and prejudice. What the airline didn't know was that Dr. King was about to teach them a lesson in reality. The air in Terminal 4 of JFK was a familiar symphony of chaos. The squeak of suitcase wheels on polished linoleum, the distant garbled announcements of gate changes, the low hum of 1,000 conversations blending into a single anxious note. Dr. Jameson King navigated the river of humanity with the practiced ease of a seasoned traveler. He wasn't dressed to impress. His attire was a uniform of comfort for the long-haul flight to London, a soft, charcoal grey hoodie from his alma mater MIT well-worn jeans, and a pair of simple, comfortable sneakers. The only hint of his status was the sleek, minimalist watch on his wrist, a Patek Philippe Calatrava, a gift to himself for publishing his 3rd major paper on composite material sciences. It was understated a quiet nod to success that only a discerning eye would notice. He arrived at Gate B23, the departure point for Apex Air Flight 101. The gate area was sectioned off a velvet rope separating the sprawling general boarding area from the exclusive enclave reserved for VIP and first-class passengers. A handful of people were already seated in the plush leather chairs, sipping complimentary water and typing on laptops. Jameson approached the podium where a gate agent was scrutinizing her computer screen with an air of intense concentration. She had a name tag that read Brenda. Her blonde hair was pulled back into a severe ponytail, and her lips were a thin, disapproving line. She exuded an aura of someone who wielded her small sphere of authority like a weapon. Jameson waited patiently for her to acknowledge him. When she didn't, he cleared his throat gently. "Excuse me," he said, his voice a low, calm baritone. Brenda's eyes flickered up, scanning him from head to toe in a fraction of a second. It was a look he knew well. It was a look that took in his dark skin, his casual clothes, and the simple backpack slung over his shoulder, and arrived at a swift, uncharitable conclusion. Her expression, already sour, curdled further. "General boarding hasn't started yet." She snapped her gaze, already returning to the screen. "You'll need to wait over there." She gestured vaguely with her pen towards the crowded main area. "I understand," Jameson replied, unfazed. He slid his passport and his boarding pass across the counter. "I'm flying first. I believe VIP boarding has begun." Brenda picked up the boarding pass as if it were a soiled tissue. She glanced at it, then back at him. The cogs of disbelief were turning visibly behind her eyes. "Seat 1A. King." She read aloud, her tone dripping with suspicion. She typed his name into the system, her fingers tapping the keys with unnecessary force. A flicker of something annoyance, frustration crossed her face when his details appeared valid and confirmed. "This is the VIP boarding lounge," she said, her voice retaining its sharp edge. "It's for our premier status members and first-class ticket holders." "Yes," Jameson said simply. "As I am." A man in a crisp suit, perhaps a decade older than Jameson, walked up and placed his documents on the counter. Brenda gave him a brilliant, practiced smile. "Good morning, Mr. Peterson. Welcome. Go right on in." Mr. Peterson nodded, glanced curiously at Jameson, and then swept past the velvet rope. Brenda's smile vanished the moment she turned back to Jameson. "I'm going to need to see the credit card you used to purchase this ticket," she demanded. It wasn't a request. It was an accusation. The subtext was clear. There's no way you could have afforded this ticket legitimately. A familiar weariness settled deep in Jameson's bones. He had faced this his entire life. The surprise in the professor's eyes when he, a young black kid from Queens, aced the advanced physics exam. The security guard who tailed him in high-end stores. The random selection for extra screening at every airport. It was a tax he paid for existing in spaces where people thought he didn't belong. "That won't be necessary," he said, keeping his voice level. "My ticket is valid. My passport matches the name. I'd like to take my seat." "Sir," Brenda said, her voice rising in pitch, a clear sign she was enjoying the confrontation. "Airline policy gives me the right to verify a purchase if I suspect fraudulent activity. And a last-minute first-class booking on this route is unusual. I booked it 3 weeks ago." Jameson stated the information readily available on the very screen she was staring at. He didn't raise his voice. He wouldn't give her the satisfaction of seeing him angry, of conforming to the stereotype she had already built in her mind. He was a scientist. He dealt in facts, in evidence. Brenda's face flushed slightly. She had been caught in a lie. But instead of backing down, she doubled down. "I don't care when you booked it. Show me the card or I can't let you through. I could have you removed for causing a disturbance." The word disturbance hung in the air. Jameson was standing still, speaking in a measured tone, yet he was the disturbance. The irony was bitter. He looked past her at the passengers in the VIP lounge. Some were now watching their faces, a mixture of curiosity and discomfort. Mr. Peterson was frowning, a crease of concern on his forehead. "There is no disturbance," Jameson said, his patience finally beginning to fray. "There is only a passenger with a valid ticket and a gate agent who is refusing to do her job. My job," Brenda hissed, leaning forward, "is to ensure the security and integrity of this airline, and people like you are exactly what I'm trained to look for." The words, "people like you," struck him with physical force. It was no longer about policy or procedure. She had stripped away the pretense and laid the ugly truth bare on the counter between them. For Brenda, his crime was not the lack of a credit card. It was the color of his skin. "I see." Jameson said, a profound disappointment washing over him. He took a slow breath, composing himself. He could demand to see her manager. He could make a scene. He could let the rage that was simmering in his chest boil over. But he had another tool at his disposal, a tool far more powerful. "I think," he said, his voice now dangerously quiet, "that you should call your supervisor. I think you should do it right now." Brenda smirked, a triumphant, ugly twisting of her lips. She thought he was bluffing, that he was trying to intimidate her. She picked up the phone behind the counter, her eyes never leaving his. "This is Brenda at gate B23, she chirped into the receiver. "Yes, Cynthia, I have a situation here. A passenger, non-compliant, refusing to verify his purchase. Yes. Becoming aggressive." She smirked at him as she said the last part. Jameson simply stood his ground, a pillar of calm in the storm of her making. The wall she had erected was invisible, but it was as real as concrete and steel. And he was about to bring it down. Cynthia arrived within minutes, bustling through the crowd with an air of self-importance. She was a woman in her late 40s. Her uniform impeccably pressed her expression, a well-rehearsed mask of managerial concern. She assessed the situation with a quick glance, her flustered but resolute employee, the tall black man in the hoodie standing calmly at the desk, and the growing audience of onlookers. "What seems to be the problem here?" Cynthia asked, her voice directed at Brenda, but her eyes fixed on Jameson, sizing him up. "This gentleman." Brenda began loading the word with sarcasm. is refusing to show me the credit card he used to purchase his first-class ticket. It's a high-value one-way ticket, and his name is not familiar to me as one of our frequent premier flyers. I suspect it may be a fraudulent purchase." Cynthia turned her full attention to Jameson. "Sir, I'm Cynthia, the gate supervisor. Brenda is simply following procedure. We have to be vigilant about fraud. If you could just show us the card, we can get this sorted out and get you on your way." Her tone was condescendingly sweet, the kind one might use on a difficult child. It was a classic good cop, bad cop routine, designed to wear him down to make him feel unreasonable. "Cynthia," Jameson said, reading her name tag, "my ticket is not fraudulent. It was purchased by my company's corporate travel department, as are all my flights. The card used is a central corporate account which I do not carry with me. This has never been an issue on any other airline, including this one, on which I have flown dozens of times." "Well, perhaps our policies have been updated," Cynthia countered smoothly, not missing a beat. "We have new security directives. We must be cautious." "Is it your policy to demand credit card verification from every first-class passenger?" Jameson asked, his gaze unwavering. "Or just the ones who don't fit your profile of a first-class passenger?" He gestured with his head towards Mr. Peterson, who was now standing near the edge of the lounge, watching the exchange with undisguised interest. "Did you ask that gentleman for his credit card? Did you ask the woman in the blue blazer or the couple over there?" Cynthia's smile tightened. "Sir, we are not going to debate airline policy in front of the entire terminal. You are holding up the boarding process. Either show valid identification and payment verification, or we will have to deny you boarding. I have shown you my passport. It is valid." Jameson retorted, his voice hardening. The injustice of it was a physical weight on his chest. He wasn't just fighting for his seat. He was fighting against the quiet, insidious assumption that he was lesser, that he was a potential criminal. "You are not protecting your airline. You are engaging in a clear act of discrimination." The word discrimination caused a ripple through the watching crowd. A few people started murmuring. A young woman, a few feet away, subtly lifted her phone, its camera lens aimed in their direction. Cynthia noticed it, and a flash of anger crossed her face. "I'll ask you to lower your voice, sir," she said, her voice dropping to a low, threatening register. "Accusations like that are very serious, and creating a scene like this is grounds for being removed from the airport by Port Authority." It was the final move in their game of chess. She had threatened him with law enforcement. She was escalating this from a customer service dispute to a security threat, a classic tactic to silence and intimidate. For many, it would have been the final straw, the point of surrender or explosive anger. Jameson felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, the fight-or-flight instinct kicking in, but he channeled it not into rage, but into a steely resolve. He had been polite, he had been patient, he had followed the rules. They were the ones who had broken the social contract, who had judged him on sight and found him wanting. He looked at Brenda, who was watching him with a smug, vindicated expression. He looked at Cynthia, her face a mask of corporate righteousness. They had built a fortress of bureaucracy and prejudice around themselves, and they believed it was impenetrable. "You're right," Jameson said, his sudden agreement catching them off guard. "Accusations are serious. So let's deal in facts, shall we?" He pulled his phone from his pocket. It wasn't to show a credit card statement or a confirmation email. He navigated to his contacts, his thumb hovering over a name. "You're the gate supervisor, Cynthia," he said, looking her directly in the eye. "Who's your boss?" "The station manager." Cynthia blinked. "I report to the director of JFK operations, but he isn't here, and he certainly wouldn't." "No, not him," Jameson interrupted calmly. "I mean your boss's boss's boss. The person at the top, the one whose name is on the side of the plane. Brenda let out a short, derisive laugh. Are you going to call the president? This is ridiculous. Not the president, Jameson said, his eyes still locked on Cynthia's. The CEO. Cynthia's professional veneer finally cracked. She stared at him as if he had just announced he was from Mars. You think you can call the CEO of Apex Air, so you are delusional. Now for the last time. Jameson didn't wait for her to finish her threat. He pressed the call button. The phone began to ring, the sound cutting through the tense silence that had fallen over the gate area. He didn't put it to his ear. Instead, he tapped the speakerphone icon. The ringing echoed from the small device in his hand. 1 ring, 2 rings. The onlookers were frozen, watching this bizarre, high-stakes drama unfold. Brenda and Cynthia exchanged a look of disbelief and contempt. Then a voice came through the speaker, a rich, powerful voice laced with a faint Texan drawl, a voice known to anyone who followed the aviation industry. Jameson, everything all right, buddy? I thought you were on your way to London. Don't tell me you're cancelling our dinner at the Ledbury. Jameson King allowed a small, weary smile to touch his lips. He looked at the stunned, pale faces of the 2 women in front of him. Arthur, he said into the phone, his voice clear and calm. I might be a little late. I'm having a bit of trouble at JFK. The name Arthur hung in the air, charged and electric. For anyone working at Apex Air, from the baggage handlers to the board of directors, the first name alone was enough. There was only one Arthur that mattered. Arthur Finch, the legendary founder and CEO of Apex Air, the charismatic, hard-driving billionaire who had revolutionized transatlantic air travel. On the phone, Arthur Finch's relaxed tone sharpened instantly. Trouble? What kind of trouble? Are you okay? I'm fine, Arthur. It's not a security issue, Jameson clarified, before glancing pointedly at Cynthia, who looked as if she'd seen a ghost. It appears to be more of a personnel issue. I'm at gate B23, and your staff are refusing to let me board. Cynthia and Brenda were statues carved from ice. The blood had drained from their faces, leaving behind a waxy, sickly pallor. Brenda's smug smirk had been wiped away, replaced by an expression of pure, unadulterated horror. The phone in her hand, which she had used with such authority moments ago, now seemed like a foreign object. There what? Arthur's voice boomed from the speaker, losing all its folksy charm and gaining the hard edge of command that had made him a titan of industry. Put one of them on the phone, right now. Jameson held the phone out towards Cynthia. The supervisor stared at it as if it were a venomous snake. Her carefully constructed world of rules and authority had just been vaporized by a single phone call. Her mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. Ma'am, Jameson prompted his voice, devoid of triumph. He felt only a deep, profound sadness that it had come to this. With a trembling hand, Cynthia took the phone. She held it to her ear, her knuckles white. Hello, she stammered. The entire gate area was silent. Even the baby who had been fussing in the back row had gone quiet. Every passenger, every staff member was transfixed. Arthur Finch's voice, now muffled to the crowd, but undoubtedly deafening to Cynthia, erupted from the earpiece. They couldn't hear the exact words, but they could see their effect. Cynthia flinched as if struck. Her eyes darted wildly between Jameson and Brenda. Her posture, once so rigid and proud, collapsed. She began nodding frantically, her entire body shaking. Yes, Mr. Finch. I understand. No, sir, I wasn't aware, of course. Immediately, Mr. Finch. Yes, sir. She handed the phone back to Jameson, her hand shaking so badly she almost dropped it. Her face was a mask of sheer panic. "Arthur," Jameson said, taking the phone off speaker. "I'm on my way," Arthur's voice said, now grim and resolute. "Don't you move a goddamn inch, Jameson. I'm in the Admiral's Club. 5 minutes. And for what it's worth, I am so sorry." "It's not your fault, Arthur," Jameson said quietly. "The hell it isn't. It's my name on the plane. It's my culture in the company. It's my damn fault. I'll see you in 5. The line went dead. Jameson slipped his phone back into his pocket. He looked at the two women. They stood frozen, unable to meet his gaze. The power dynamic had not just shifted. It had been inverted with seismic force. A moment ago, they held his travel plans, his dignity in their hands. Now their entire careers, their futures, rested in his. "Please," Cynthia whispered, her voice a ragged, desperate plea. "Please, sir. It was a misunderstanding." Brenda, finally jolted from her stupor, began to speak, her words tumbling out in a panicked rush. "We were just following procedure. We have to be careful. We get so many fraudulent attempts. I didn't mean—" "What didn't you mean, Brenda?" Jameson asked, his voice soft but cutting. "Did you not mean to demand my credit card? Did you not mean to accuse me of being a disturbance? Did you not mean to look at me and decide based on nothing but my appearance that I was people like you?" Brenda flinched, her face crumbling. The word shame was inadequate to describe the emotion that washed over her. It was a complete and total unraveling. Mr. Peterson, the businessman from the lounge, stepped forward. "I saw the whole thing," he said, his voice firm and clear, addressing no one in particular, but ensuring everyone heard. "The man was a perfect gentleman. Your staff were unprofessional and accusatory from the start. It was disgraceful." The young woman who had been filming lowered her phone, a look of grim satisfaction on her face. The court of public opinion had already delivered its verdict. The next 5 minutes were the longest of Brenda's and Cynthia's lives. They stood in a state of suspended animation, trapped between the man they had wronged and the impending arrival of the man who could end their careers with a single word. The silence at the gate was thick with tension and recrimination. The other passengers just stared, waiting for the final act of the play. Then a commotion was heard from the direction of the main concourse. A figure was moving against the flow of the crowd, parting it like a ship's prow through water. He was tall, with a mane of silver hair and the restless energy of a predator. He wore an impeccably tailored suit, but he moved with the informal, long-legged stride of a rancher. It was Arthur Finch, and he looked furious. Arthur Finch didn't slow down as he approached the gate. His eyes, the color of a stormy sky, were locked on Jameson. He bypassed the podium, ignored the velvet rope, and walked straight to his friend. He didn't offer a handshake. Instead, he pulled Jameson into a firm, brief hug, clapping him on the back. "You okay?" Arthur asked, his voice low and intense, for Jameson's ears only. "I'm fine," Jameson replied, a genuine smile finally reaching his eyes. The presence of his old friend was a balm on the wound of the last half hour. "Just a little turbulence before we even took off." Arthur pulled back, but kept a hand on Jameson's shoulder. He then turned, and for the first time his gaze fell upon Cynthia and Brenda. If they had thought his voice on the phone was terrifying, his presence in person was apocalyptic. The full force of his personality, the charisma, the power, the barely concealed rage washed over them. It was like standing in the jet wash of a 747. "Which one of you is Cynthia?" he asked, his voice dangerously calm. The supervisor raised a trembling hand, as if a schoolgirl being called on by a fearsome headmaster. I am Mr. Finch." Arthur's eyes narrowed. "And you must be Brenda." Brenda just nodded, unable to speak, looking at the floor as if hoping it might swallow her whole. "I have one question for the two of you." Arthur said, his voice echoing in the silent terminal. "What in God's name were you thinking?" Cynthia found a sliver of her voice. "Mr. Finch, sir, we were following security protocols. There was a suspicion of—" "Suspicion of what?" Arthur cut her off, his voice rising. "Suspicion of a black man flying first class. Is that the protocol now? Because I must have missed that memo. I want you to look at this man. His name is Dr. Jameson King." Arthur paused, letting the title sink in. "He's not just a passenger. He's not just a friend of mine." He turned to Jameson. "Is it okay if I—" Jameson gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. He hadn't wanted this, but now that the floodgates were open, the truth had to come out. Arthur turned back to the two women, his voice resonating with power. "Do you know what Apex Air's greatest competitive advantage is? It's our Apex E engine modification. It's a proprietary design that gives our fleet a 15% greater fuel efficiency than any of our competitors. It saves this company over $800 million a year. It is the single biggest reason for our profitability, our stock price, and our ability to expand." He pointed a finger at Jameson. "This man invented it." A collective gasp went through the crowd of onlookers. Mr. Peterson's jaw dropped. The woman with the phone raised it again, realizing the story had just become infinitely bigger. "He holds the patent," Arthur continued, his voice like thunder. "The patent for the cobalt titanium alloy that makes the turbine blades lighter and more heat-resistant. The patent for the fuel injection software that optimizes burn rate at high altitudes. He didn't just buy a ticket on this airline. In a very real sense, he built this airline. His genius is in the DNA of every single plane we fly. He's not just my friend. He was my partner when we started this whole damn thing in a garage in Palo Alto 20 years ago. He is the K in the company's original R&D name, F&K Innovations. So when you tell him he doesn't belong here, you are not just insulting a passenger. You are telling the man who laid the very cornerstone of this company that he doesn't belong in his own house." The silence that followed was absolute. The weight of Arthur's words crushed Brenda and Cynthia. They had not just stopped a VIP passenger. They had insulted a founding father, the secret architect behind the empire they worked for. Their small-minded prejudice had led them to commit an act of corporate blasphemy. Arthur wasn't finished. He stepped closer, lowering his voice into a menacing growl. "You two are suspended effective immediately. Don't touch your computers. Don't speak to another passenger. An HR team will meet you in the operations office. You will hand over your badges, and you will be escorted from the premises. You are not to set foot in a building with my name on it ever again. Am I understood?" "Yes, Mr. Finch," Cynthia choked out. Brenda could only nod, tears now streaming silently down her face. Arthur turned his back on them, a clear dismissal. He scanned the crowd, his eyes landing on another gate agent who was watching, pale and wide-eyed, from the adjacent gate. "You," he barked, "get over here and finish boarding this flight. Properly." He then turned to the stunned passengers in the VIP lounge and the general boarding area. "Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Apex Air, I apologize. I apologize for the disgusting behavior you've had to witness and for the delay. We will do better. We must do better." His gaze finally rested on Jameson, the anger drained from his face, replaced by a deep fraternal affection and regret. "Come on, Jay," he said softly, using his old college nickname for him. "Let's get you on the plane." As Arthur Finch personally escorted Dr. Jameson King down the jet bridge past the stunned flight attendants who snapped to attention at the sight of their CEO, the passengers at gate B23 finally broke their silence. It started as a few scattered claps from Mr. Peterson and the woman with the phone, And then it spread, growing into a wave of spontaneous, sustained applause. It wasn't just for the drama. It was for the sight of justice, swift and unequivocal, being served right before their eyes. Once on board, the lead flight attendant, a woman named Maria, who had been with Apex for 15 years, personally showed Jameson and Arthur to their seats in the first row. The hushed, luxurious cabin of the 707 felt like a different universe from the harsh, fluorescent-lit drama of the gate. "Dr. King, Mr. Finch, can I get you anything before takeoff? A glass of Dom Perignon? Anything at all?" Maria asked, her professionalism a soothing balm, though her eyes betrayed her shock at the unexpected passenger in 1B. "I think my friend here could use a Macallan 18. "Neat," Arthur said, settling into his seat. "I'll take one too." "Of course," Maria said, scurrying away. The two men sat in silence for a moment, the low hum of the cabin around them. Jameson stared out the small oval window at the ground crew bustling below. He felt a profound sense of exhaustion, the adrenaline from the confrontation ebbing away, leaving a hollow ache in its place. "I still can't believe it," Arthur said, breaking the silence. He ran a hand through his silver hair. "I read the reports, I see the statistics, but to see it happen right in front of me, to you, it makes me sick." "It's not new, Arthur," Jameson said, his voice weary. "It's just usually not so public. It's the little things, the taxi that doesn't stop, the waiter who ignores you, the assumption that you're the janitor, not the keynote speaker. It's 1,000 tiny cuts." "This wasn't a tiny cut, Jay. This was a damn amputation." Arthur shook his head, his anger still simmering. "To think that my own employees wearing my logo would treat the most brilliant man I know like a common criminal. Brenda and Cynthia are just the symptom. The disease is in the culture, and that's on me. I've been so focused on logistics, on profit margins, on beating the competition, I let the humanity of the company slip." Maria returned with their whiskies, placing them on the polished burl wood between their seats. They both thanked her and took a long sip. The fiery warmth of the scotch was grounding. "What you said out there," Jameson began, "about me building the company. You didn't have to do that." "The hell I didn't," Arthur countered, turning in his seat to face him fully. "It was the truth, and it was the only thing that would make them understand the scale of their stupidity. People respect money and power. When they looked at you, they didn't see it. I had to spell it out for them in the only language they understand. I hate that it's true, but it is." "They'll be fired," Jameson stated. It wasn't a question. "Fired?" Arthur let out a short, harsh laugh. "Jay, their careers in this industry are over. The video from that girl's phone was already going viral before we even boarded. By the time we land in London, this will be the lead story on every news outlet. Apex Air CEO slams racist staff. The brand damage will be catastrophic." Jameson winced. He had never sought this. He didn't revel in the destruction of Brenda's and Cynthia's lives, as satisfying as the initial justice felt. He saw them not as monsters, but as products of a system of a society that quietly nurtured these biases. "That's not what I wanted," Jameson said quietly. "It's what they earned," Arthur said bluntly, "and it's what I need to fix this. This can't be a quiet firing and a memo about diversity. This has to be a public reckoning. It's going to be my #1 priority. We're going to tear down our hiring training and promotion practices and rebuild them from scratch. I want you to be a part of it." "Me?" Jameson looked surprised. "Arthur, I'm a scientist. I build things with alloys and code. I don't build corporate culture." "You're the smartest person I know," Arthur replied. "And you're the one this happened to. You have the moral authority and the intellect to see the systemic flaws. I need your brain, Jay. Not just for the engines, but for the soul of this company." The plane's doors closed, and the captain's voice came over the intercom announcing their departure. As the powerful engines, Jameson's engines, spooled up with their characteristic efficient whine, he looked out the window again. The ground fell away, and the sprawling complexity of New York City became a map below. He thought about his journey. From a kid in Queens obsessed with taking apart radios, to a scholarship student at MIT, to the man whose mind had reshaped an industry. And yet, in the end, none of that had mattered to Brenda at the gate. She had seen none of it. Maybe Arthur was right. Maybe it was time to focus his intellect on a different kind of engineering problem, a human problem. "Okay, Arthur," he said, as the plane banked gracefully over the Atlantic. "I'll help you. Let's fix it." Arthur Finch smiled a genuine, relieved smile. "Good," he said, raising his glass. "To a new blueprint." Jameson clinked his glass against his friend's. To a new blueprint. Below them, the world churned on. In an office at JFK, two women were tearfully packing their belongings into cardboard boxes, their lives irrevocably altered. On millions of phone screens, a video was being shared, liked and commented, on sparking outrage and a global conversation. The consequences of that one ugly moment at Gate B-23 were just beginning to ripple outwards, and they would change far more than just the lives of those involved. They would change the very soul of Apex Air. By the time Flight 101 touched down at Heathrow, the story had exploded. The Angel of Apex. As the media had dubbed Dr. Jameson King, was an international sensation. The cell phone video, shaky but clear, was the lead item on BBC News, CNN, and countless other outlets. Mr. Peterson had given a detailed, eloquent interview to a reporter before his connecting flight, praising Jameson's unflappable dignity and corroborating every detail. The narrative was powerful and simple. A brilliant black man, the secret genius behind a multi-billion-dollar airline, was racially profiled by his own company. Apex Air's stock opened 12% down on the New York Stock Exchange, a paper loss of over $2 billion. Boycott Apex was trending worldwide on Twitter. Arthur Finch's PR department was in full meltdown. For Brenda, the karma was swift and brutal. She had been fired for cause her employee benefits terminated. She returned to her small apartment in Howard Beach to find her name and face plastered all over the news. She was instantly recognizable as the villain of the story. Her social media was flooded with threats and vitriol. Friends and even some family members stopped answering her calls. Within a week, her landlord, citing a clause in her lease about bringing the property into disrepute, began eviction proceedings. She lost everything: her job, her reputation, her home. Forced to move in with her sister in a different state, she fell into a deep depression. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Dr. King's calm, disappointed face and heard the sheer, unadulterated power in Arthur Finch's voice. In her quiet moments of forced reflection, she tried to understand her own actions. She had always seen herself as a good person, a rule follower. But the video didn't lie. She saw the sneer on her own face, heard the condescension in her voice. The words, "people like you," echoed in her mind. She was forced to confront the ugly truth that she had judged a man by the color of his skin, and in doing so, had destroyed her own life. The fortress of authority she had so proudly defended had been a prison of her own making. Cynthia's fall was just as hard, if less public. As a supervisor, her failure was deemed even greater. Her professional network evaporated overnight. No other airline would touch her. She had a mortgage, 2 kids in college, and a husband whose small business was struggling. The financial pressure was immense. She had spent 20 years climbing the corporate ladder at Apex, only to be cast out in disgrace. Her sin was not just prejudice, but cowardice. She had blindly backed her employees' bad judgment instead of de-escalating the situation. She had chosen the path of least resistance and found it led off a cliff. But the true karma was not just about punishment. It was about change. Arthur Finch was true to his word. A week after the incident, he held a press conference. He didn't make excuses or offer platitudes. He stood before the world's media and took full, unflinching responsibility. The events at JFK last week were not an anomaly. He said, his voice raw with conviction. They were a symptom of a corporate culture that I allowed to become complacent. A culture where prejudice, conscious or unconscious, could fester. I apologize to Dr. Jameson King, but apologies without action are worthless. He then laid out his plan. It was radical. He announced the immediate creation of a new C-suite position, Chief Culture and Inclusion Officer, reporting directly to him. He announced a mandatory company-wide bias and belonging training program designed from the ground up by a leading team of sociologists and psychologists. He dissolved the existing HR review board and created a new independent civilian oversight panel to review all discrimination complaints. And then came the biggest announcement. To honor the man whose genius helped build this company and whose dignity in the face of prejudice has forced us to be better, Arthur announced, I am proud to launch the King Finch Initiative. Apex Air is pledging an initial endowment of $100 million to create a foundation dedicated to providing scholarships, mentorship, and career opportunities for underrepresented minorities in the fields of aerospace engineering, material, sciences, and aviation management. He paused, looking directly into the cameras. The foundation will be chaired by Dr. Jameson King himself. He has graciously agreed to lend his time and his formidable intellect to ensure that the next generation of brilliant minds, regardless of their background or the color of their skin, will not have to face the barriers he faced. We cannot change what happened at Gate B23, but we can ensure that its legacy is one of opportunity, not injustice. The news sent shockwaves through the corporate world. It was a bold, expensive, and deeply personal response. Apex Air's stock, which had been plummeting, stabilized and began to creep back up. The narrative began to shift from corporate shame to corporate responsibility. Arthur Finch had taken the worst PR crisis in his company's history and turned it into a defining moment. Jameson, who had been watching the press conference from his lab, felt a complex mix of emotions. He felt a vindication that was deeper than revenge. His humiliation had become a catalyst for something enormous, something that could change thousands of lives. The invisible wall Brenda had tried to put up had been torn down, and in its place, he and Arthur were building a bridge. The karma wasn't just hitting back at the guilty. It was lifting up the deserving. It was a force of rebalance as elegant and undeniable as any law of physics he had ever studied. A year later, the ballroom of the Marriott Marquis in Times Square was aglow, filled with the soft clinking of champagne glasses and the excited buzz of conversation. The event was the first annual gala for the King Finch Initiative, a celebration of its inaugural class of scholarship recipients. At the center of it all stood Dr. Jameson King, not in a hoodie and jeans, but in a perfectly tailored tuxedo. He had, over the past year, become reluctantly accustomed to such events, trading his quiet laboratory for the public stage. The transition was not always comfortable, but tonight it was rewarding. He watched from the side of the stage as a young woman named Sofia Ramirez, a brilliant aerospace engineering student from the Bronx, stood at the podium. She was sharp, confident, and radiated an intellect that felt both familiar and exhilarating to him. She was the star of the program, already interning at Apex's R&D division, working on next-generation fuselage composites. And so, Sophia was saying, her voice clear and strong, when people ask me how I got here, I tell them the truth. I got here because of a closed door. A murmur went through the audience. A year ago, a door at an airport was closed to Dr. King, but in response, he and Mr. Finch didn't just open a door for me and the 200 other students in this program. They built a whole new building, gave us the keys, and told us to design the future. Her eyes found Jameson's, and she smiled a look of profound, heartfelt gratitude. Dr. King, on behalf of all of us, thank you for showing us that the highest application of genius is not in solving problems of physics, but in solving problems of opportunity. The room erupted in a standing ovation. Jameson felt a warmth spread through his chest that no scientific breakthrough had ever managed to produce. As he watched Sophia, he saw a mirror of his own past, the same hunger, the same passion, the same spark of a mind eager to dismantle the universe to see how it worked. The incident at JFK had, in a strange way, given his life a second parallel purpose. He was still the architect of materials, but now he was also an architect of futures. Later that night, back in the quiet sanctuary of his study, the applause and accolades felt a world away. The silence was a welcome friend. His assistant had left the day's mail on his mahogany desk, and he sorted through it idly, a glass of scotch by his side. Tucked between industry journals and corporate reports was a single, plain envelope. The paper was thin, the handwriting neat but unremarkable. The postmark was from a small, unfamiliar town in Ohio, and the return address simply read, B. Miller. Curiosity piqued, he slid a letter opener through the seal. He unfolded the 2 pages within. Dear Dr. King, my name is Brenda Miller. I was the gate agent at JFK a year ago. I am sure you have every reason and every right to have forgotten me, but I have not forgotten you. I am writing this letter because I feel I have to. It is not to ask for your forgiveness, as I know I have no right to it. It is not to make excuses for my behavior, because I have learned there are none. After I was fired, my life fell apart. I deserve no sympathy for that. I built my own prison and then lit the match. I lost my job, my apartment, my friends. For months, I was drowning in a sea of bitterness and shame. I blamed you. I blamed Mr. Finch. I blamed the girl with the camera phone. I blamed a world I felt was unfair to me. I saw myself as the victim. The turning point came about 6 months ago. I was unemployed, living in my sister's basement, watching daytime TV. A news segment came on about the launch of the Finch initiative. They were interviewing a young woman, a student named Sophia Ramirez. She spoke of her dreams of designing spacecraft and how your foundation was the only reason she could afford to stay in school. As I listened to her, something inside me broke. I saw that my single, ugly, hateful act had not ended with my own ruin. It had been transformed into the fuel for something beautiful. You had taken the worst moment of my life and used it to create the best moment in that young woman's life. It was then I finally understood. The world wasn't unfair to me. I had been unfair to the world. I had lived my life behind a wall of ignorance, judging people based on rules and biases I never thought to question. When I looked at you, I didn't see a brilliant scientist, or even just a man with a valid ticket. I saw a threat to my tiny kingdom of rules. I was wrong. Horrifically, life-alteringly wrong. I have a new job now at a local community center. I help people navigate bureaucracy paperwork for food assistance housing applications, job training programs. It's humbling work. Every day I meet people who are judged and dismissed, and I try my best to see them to really see them. It doesn't pay much, but it's the first honest work I've ever done. I'm writing to you to say thank you. It's a strange thing to say, I know. But you, Mr. Finch, and that incident taught me a lesson I was too blind to learn on my own. You balanced the equation. My life was subtracted, but opportunity for others was added. It's a strange and painful kind of justice, but it is justice. I know I can never take back the humiliation I caused you, but I hope you know that in your own way, you changed my life for the better too. You forced me to become a better person. Sincerely, Brenda Miller. Jameson placed the letter on his desk, his fingers tracing the edge of the paper. He felt no anger. The fire of that day had long since cooled, leaving behind not a scar, but a strange, tempered strength. He walked to the large window of his study, looking out at the glittering tapestry of the city lights. He thought of the intricate chain of causality, a social physics as complex as any quantum theory. Brenda's prejudice, Cynthia's cowardice, Arthur's loyalty, his own quiet defiance, all variables in a grand chaotic equation. Brenda's transformation was the final unexpected result. Her life hadn't just been a subtraction. In its own way, it had also been a reintegration, a repurposing. Karma, he mused, wasn't a simple ledger of reward and punishment. It was a force of equilibrium, relentlessly pushing a system, however flawed, towards an ultimate, often painful balance. He returned to his desk, took a sheet of his personal stationery, and uncapped a fountain pen. His reply was brief, the words chosen with the precision of a physicist. Miss Miller, I remember you. I accept your apology. We are all variables in a complex system. The past is a fixed value. It cannot be changed. But our present actions and future choices are where we find our true significance. The most important equations are not those of aerodynamics or stress tolerance, but those of human action and consequence. You are right, the equation is balanced. Focus on the work you do now. That is the only variable that matters. Sincerely, Dr. J. King. He folded the note and sealed it in an envelope. His gaze drifted from the letter to a framed photograph on his desk. It was of him and Arthur, standing with the first class of King Finch scholars. Sophia Ramirez right beside him, beaming. Next to the photo lay a complex schematic for a new hypersonic engine component, a web of lines and numbers that was beautiful in its logic. The letter, the photo, the schematic. Prejudice and progress, humanity and science. His life's work was no longer just one or the other. It was both. He was an engineer of elegant solutions in the skies above and on the ground below. And for the first time, all of it felt perfectly, completely in balance. This story at its heart isn't just about a confrontation at an airport gate. It's a powerful reminder that the quiet dignity of one person can be more powerful than the loudest prejudice. Dr. Jameson King didn't fight fire with fire. He fought ignorance with brilliance, and in doing so, he didn't just win his seat on a plane, he redesigned the entire airline. This story shows that karma isn't always about revenge. Sometimes the most powerful karma is the positive, world-changing ripple effect that comes from turning a moment of profound injustice into a catalyst for lasting, meaningful change. It reminds us that our true worth is not what others perceive us to be, but what we build, what we create, and the opportunities we open for others. If this story moved you and made you think, please help us share it. Hit that like button, share it with your friends and family, and tell us your thoughts in the comments below. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories that matter. Thank you for listening.